بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونسترضيه ونستبينه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. Dear brothers and sisters everywhere, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today, inshallah, we're going to resume our reflections on and our Tafseer of Surat Ghafir, Surah number 40. And we have reached Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying, رَبَّنَا وَأَدْخِلْهُمْ جَنَّاتِ عَدْنٍ الَّتِي وَعَدتَّهُمْ وَمَنْ صَلَحَ مِنْ آبَائِهِمْ وَأَزْوَاجِهِمْ وَذُرِّيَّاتِهِمْ, our Lord, and make them enter the eternal gardens which you have promised them, and to the righteous among their fathers, their wives, and their offspring. Here we can see the angels who carry the throne of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the mighty throne of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the angels who are surrounding the throne, invoking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bring all believers together in paradise, so that they may find delight in one another in neighboring dwellings in paradise. And in fact, as you all know, as all believers in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala know, the mere fact or the mere admission into heaven is a great triumph from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But here, there is another blessing. There is another blessing. There is another added blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is a blessing that is granted to the inhabitants of paradise, those who have entered paradise already. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give them the company of their righteous ancestors, spouses, and offspring. And this shows the unity of all believers. The unity of all believers, as for the bond of faith is the only thing that unites fathers, spouses, and offspring. And without that bond of faith, all their ties are severed and cut off. On this ayah, رَبَّنَا وَأَدْخِلْهُمْ جَنَّاتِ عَدْنٍ الَّتِي وَعَدتَّهُمْ وَمَنْ صَلَحَ مِنْ آبَائِهِمْ وَأَزْوَاجِهِمْ وَذُرِّيَّاتِهِمْ. This ayah reminds us of Allah saying, or of a similar ayah which reads, وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَاتَّبَعَتْهُمْ ذُرِّيَّتُهُمْ بِإِيمَانٍ أَلْحَقْنَا بِهِمْ ذُرِّيَّتَهُمْ وَمَا أَلَتْنَاهُمْ مِنْ عَمَلِهِمْ مِنْ شَيْءٍ. Those who believe and whose offspring follow them in faith, they are believers just like them. To them shall we join their offspring, and we shall not decrease the reward of their deeds in anything. This means that all of them will be made equal in status in paradise, and in this way they may delight in one another's company. And the one who is in a higher status will not lose anything. On the contrary, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will raise the one whose deeds are of a lower status, so that they will become equal as a favor and as a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sayyidina Sa'id ibn Jubayr said, when the believer enters paradise, he will ask, where is his father, son, and brother are? Where his father, son, and brother are, it will be said to him, they didn't reach the same level of are the angels. And for sure, this is because of this. This is because they make dua for the believers, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgives them, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala admits them into paradise, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala joins them with their ancestors and spouses and offspring. Then he said, the most treacherous of the servants of Allah towards the believers are the shayateen, the devils. And for sure, this is because they do their best to mislead and misguide the believers. They don't want any of them to enter paradise or to receive and obtain the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then the angels conclude their dua here, or in this ayah, by saying, إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ الْعَزِيزُ الْحَكِيمُ. You are the Almighty, the All-Wise, the one whom none can resist or overwhelm. No one can resist Allah's command. No one can overwhelm Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or His command. What you will happens, and what you don't will doesn't happen. Nothing takes place in this whole universe except with Allah's with Allah's will subhanahu wa ta'ala. You are wise in all that you say and do, in all that you legislate and decree subhanahu wa ta'ala. This ayah and the like console the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his ummah, who tolerated the hardships of da'wah, and those who follow them in goodness till the day of judgment. Hence, O Muhammad, as if this ayah is saying that, O Muhammad, if the disbelievers of Mecca stood against you and showed hostility towards you and towards your followers, don't be sad, don't be distressed. It suffices you and it suffices your ummah that the angels seek forgiveness for you and for your ummah. And these are not any angels. Here we're talking about the bearers of the mighty throne and those who are surrounding it. They are a very special category and class of the angels. Then the angels go on invoking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the interest of the believers. وَقِهِمُ السَّيِّئَاتِ, and save them from the sins, both the actions and the consequences of these actions. They ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to save the believers. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us all from among those. They ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to save the believers from committing sins from the very beginning, and to save them from the consequences of sinning if they ever commit sins. And who doesn't? Who doesn't commit sins? وَقِهِمُ السَّيِّئَاتِ وَمَنْ تَقِ السَّيِّئَاتِ يَوْمَئِذٍ, and whomsoever you save from the sins that day, the day of resurrection, فَقَدْ رَحِمْتَ, him verily you have taken into mercy. You have taken him into your mercy, O Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You have protected him and you have saved him from punishment. And this is a fact. And the ayah culminates in saying, وَذَلِكَ هُوَ الْفَوْزُ الْعَظِيمُ, and that is the supreme success. That is the great success. And this is one of the most important parts of this supplication of the angels. It's a fact that the evil deeds ruin people and lead them to their doom. But when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shields a believer from evil, He actually shields the believer from the consequences of such evil. And this shielding from evil is indeed the great triumph and the great success granted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to the believers. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us from among these. But why is this described? Why is this triumph is described as being great or supreme? This is because any victory or triumph or success beneath this one, which is being saved on the day of resurrection, is little and insignificant when compared to the victory or triumph or success that is mentioned here in this ayah. In fact, any victory or triumph or success that is obtained in this present life will perish and will come to an end, just as this whole present life is going to come to an end and to perish as well. Then the Quran says, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا يُنَادَوْنَ. So here we have a shift. The surah shifts from addressing and talking about the believers and their stats in Jannah, in paradise, and the blessings and the favors Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bestow on them. Now the surah talks about the disbelievers, those who disbelieved in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this present life, and those who disobeyed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا يُنَادَوْنَ لمقت الله أكبر من مقتكم أنفسكم إذ تدعون إلى الإيمان فتكفرون. Those who disbelieve will be addressed. Indeed, Allah's hatred, Allah's aversion was greater towards you than your hatred toward yourselves when you were called to the faith, but you used to refuse. So here the surah tells us that the disbelievers will feel regret on the day of resurrection, on the day of judgment, when they enter hell. And the Quran here, the Arabic text, uses the strongest word of hate, or the strongest word for hate, which is maqt, which is aversion, great aversion. When they actually experience the unbearable punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they will hate themselves for with the utmost hatred because of the sins that they committed in the past, which were the cause of their entering the hell fire. And at this point, the angels will tell them in a loud voice that Allah's hatred, Allah's aversion towards them in this world, when faith was offered to them and they rejected it, is greater than their hatred towards themselves in this situation. So Allah's hatred for the people of misguidance, when faith is presented to them in this present life, and they turn away from it and refuse to accept it, is greater than their hatred for themselves when they see the punishment of Allah with their own eyes on the day of resurrection. They will hate themselves. They will hate themselves because their selves were the ones who made them reject the Prophet's messages, the messages that were brought to them through the messengers and the prophets whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent to them to guide them to the right path, and they became disbelievers. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hates them because they chose other than faith in Him, and they prevented themselves from listening to the word of Allah, listening to the speech of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they prevented themselves from that goodness. And wallahi, it's a fact. It's a fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't want anyone to enter hellfire, but it's the people's choice. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us and made us free choosers. And that's why we are gonna be held responsible and held accountable for all the decisions that we have made throughout our lives. Dear brothers and sisters, here we come to the end of this episode. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. Until we meet next week, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.